You're not recording yourself, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and span around to the room so we can do a count. All right. We good? All right. So my speech today is on the Las Vegas mob, and we know that Las Vegas has been known as Sin City for quite a long time, and there's various reasons on the nickname. It's really known for gambling, and the mob really did establish gambling here in Las Vegas years ago. The mob has been established for close to 50 years, honestly, in Las Vegas. It started out in the 40s, gained prominent basically in the 60s and 70s. It really took off with building the hotels, and I'll get into that a little bit. But and in the 80s, it just started, the FBI started catching on, and then they started falling off, and we'll talk about if the mob really does exist today. So they took on a whole new look of like how to loan shark, racketeer, prostitution, and even murder in Las Vegas. So in the 1940s, that's where the birth of organized crime started in Las Vegas. I don't know if you guys know, but Hoover Dam was built in 1935, and it was able to supply all the power. That's how the city lights came about in Las Vegas. And all of the workers that built the dam all pretty much left after the dam was built, but it created Lake Mead, which increased tourism, and mobsters started to see that more people wanted to come into Las Vegas, and they thought, man, a resort hotel would be great. We can make a lot of money, and we can get into a lot of crime here in Las Vegas. So in the 1940s, you guys might recall, if you guys are familiar with any mobsters, but guys that in the Italian mob, Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, they were famous in the Italian mafia out in New York. They lived in Los Angeles at the time, and they saw like basically Meyer Lansky saw like an upkeep, like a potential that Las Vegas had for gambling and what the mob could do to it. So he drove out to this small city of Las Vegas at the time in the 1940s. And started to create what he wanted. You know, he had this vision of building a resort hotel. He started actually the gambling operation in Cuba for the mob back in the 40s, 30s, and 40s. And so he had a little bit of history of that. So he saw the potential that Las Vegas had. And he had a quote saying that the winners are the ones who control the gaming, everybody else is suckers. So he already saw how the house could pretty much take everybody's money if they wanted to. So he drove out here. Bugsy Siegel was a good friend of his, and so he started getting into buying one of the resorts and building it. And at the time, he took over the El Cortez in downtown, and he had a partner. His partner was Meyer Lansky, and then he decided to branch out, and the Flamingo Resort was getting built at the time. By some guy named Billy Wilkerson. And so Bugsy had a lot of connections and stuff within the mob and senators and stuff like that. And so he kind of persuaded his way to where the Teamsters wouldn't loan money to this guy, and he fell out, and Bugsy came in and took it over. And he knew a U.S. Senator, Pat McCarran, out here in Las Vegas, where McCarran Airport is named after. Those two were friends, and so Senator McCarran used to redirect projects from Nevada to help build the Flamingo. So he was opening the Flamingo on New Year's Eve in 1946. It was supposed to be this grand opening. Well, they had some crazy freak storm that night. The rooms weren't finished, and they didn't have enough security to where even the dealers started taking money. It was a total disaster, the opening of the Flamingo. And so they ended up having to close. They reopened like 3 months later. Barely anybody had really showed up, so the mob really fell out of favor with him, and he ended up getting killed June 20th, 1947 in Beverly Hills. So he started to establish the mob into Las Vegas, but the 50s and 60s is really when the East Coast mobsters really started to stake their claim in Las Vegas. So I don't know, there's a couple of smaller named people, Mo Dalitz. He came from, he come from Cleveland, and he started buying out properties with Teamsters loans and stuff like that. He started getting in with the Teamsters and getting loans, and he ended up building the the Desert Inn and the Stardust Hotel. And what was interesting about the Stardust is another guy actually built it, and Mo Dallas loaned him money, and when the guy had the Stardust built, he couldn't pay Mo Dallas back, and he mysteriously died right on the casino floor of a heart attack. So that's one of the things the mobsters are, always been known for, is having people whacked without anybody really knowing that they got whacked. So, so he ended up taking over the Stardust. But he was also a community figure where he wanted to put like a positive light on mobsters coming into Las Vegas. He helped build Sunrise Hospital, the Boulevard Mall, the Las Vegas Country Club. So he was he started building all these resorts and all of these different places where the community can grow. Until one day where he had this guy named Howard Hughes staying at his hotel, and he wanted to kick Howard Hughes out because he wanted some high rollers to come in and start making money. Well, Howard Hughes ended up buying his hotel and buying a whole bunch of other hotels, and Mo started seeing the writing on the wall that the authorities were going to start cracking down on the mobs owning these businesses, owning these hotels, and so he sold all of his properties to Howard Hughes, and he pretty much got out of town. There was another guy that was also prominent at the same time. His name was Johnny Rosselli, and he was more like he's kind of like a Bugsy Siegel type of guy. He had a lot of power in Los Angeles. He was in charge of the movie industry in Los Angeles, and he knew this up-and-coming actor, singer named Frank Sinatra, who was nobody at the time, but he helped him get a role in a movie, and Frank was forever indebted to him, so he brought him out to Las Vegas, and we know how Frank Sinatra came and has some ties to the mob and stuff, allegedly. So Rosselli was very big on getting entertainment into Las Vegas. He also was known as being involved in the assassination plot of Fidel Castro in Cuba, and was rumored to be working with the CIA. And what's interesting about him is Fidel Castro had said, hey, if those Kennedy brothers have anything to do with my assassination attempt, I'm going to return the favor on them. Well, we know Robert and John Kennedy got assassinated, obviously, and they believe that Johnny Rosselli had some ties to him and knew about it. And he was getting ready to testify in a hearing, and he got murdered by another mobster, Sammy Trafficante, who was also involved, and he thought, oh man, I don't want that guy to rat me out. So he ended up killing Rosselli. So another guy, same thing, Sammy Momo Giancana, he was the same way, where he was involved in the CIA investigation too. What he had done in Las Vegas is he got involved in a skimming racket with the mob, where they would skim the profits off of all the hotels and stuff for the mob. He made like $2 billion a year for the mob with them, but he was involved in that same CIA hearing, and he was eventually murdered too. So the 70s and 80s started coming around, and that's really when murder took over, and that was really kind of the downfall of the mob in Las Vegas during the 70s and 80s. But we all remember Casino, the movie Casino that came out in 1995. Joe Pesci played a character that was based on one of the real-life mobsters in Las Vegas. His name is Tony the Ant Spilotro. He's from Chicago. He was like a big mob enforcer, and his big thing was murder and burglary. And he had a ton of murders throughout the years in Las Vegas. He also held this, he was a leader of this gang called the Hole in the Wall Gang, who committed a bunch of burglaries in Las Vegas by blowing holes in the structures and robbing the stores. He never got convicted of anything. He had a great lawyer by the name of Oscar Goodman, who got him off of just about everything that he was involved with. So until he started becoming unfavorable with the mob too, he just started becoming too high profile with his burglaries and stuff like that. And I don't know if you remember in the movie, he ended up getting murdered in a cornfield. Him and his brother got kidnapped by the mob, other mobsters, and he was beaten and buried in a cornfield by some mob that owned some farmland in Indiana. So that's what happened with Tony the Ant. But his buddy, Lefty Rosenthal, he was the guy that was played by Robert De Niro in the movie Casino. And Lefty was involved with the mob, and he ran all the casinos. And I don't know if you guys remember from the movie, he never could get the casino the gaming licenses because he always had infractions with the law and stuff, so convictions, so he couldn't get a gaming license. So he would make himself like the food director or entertainment director, but he really was running these casinos for the mob and make sure the mob got their cut of different things. And until about 7 years later, when the head of the gaming commission, some guy named Harry Reid, got into an argument with him and found him out and realized, you know, this is what the mob is doing. And so he refused, it became very public, refused his gaming license. Lefty ended up leaving all the casinos, and he currently lives in Florida. He still is involved in sports bookmaking right now. And, but that really like opened up the door for the FBI to really look into the mob. This was in 1978. They got a new sheriff. The mob, or the FBI, started increasing their people in Las Vegas to start looking at the mob. They started tapping phones, and they had indictments on all sorts of mob figures until the mob really started to die back down in the 80s. So 1978 was the major investigation into organized crime, and that's where the downfall was. So Rosenthal ended up leaving. A lot of the hotels started to be bought by legit people like Wayne Newton, Howard Hughes, people like that. So people still want to know if like the mob still does exist in Las Vegas. The last known mob murderer was a guy named Herbert Fat Herbie Blitzstein. He was actually a member of the Hole in Wall gang. He was murdered here in Las Vegas in 1997. He had a racketeering business going on, and I guess the mob wanted a little piece of that, and there was a dispute over that. So he was murdered. But other than that, since 1997, there hasn't been any known gang ties in Las Vegas that we know of. They're either hanging out really low, or they're pretty much out of the business right now. So we talk about what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Didn't really apply to the 5 families in organized crime. What happened in Vegas, they all got cut of that. So so the mob really, you know, still took a cut, and in the 80s everything started falling apart, and Blitzstein was murdered in 97, and to this day there is no other mob figures in Las Vegas. So as far as I know, the mob is pretty much out of Las Vegas. So that's pretty much it. So go ahead and hold it around, make sure they're all, don't have to see if they're all awake or anything like that, that they're all present and breathing, and hit stop.
Got it.